edition of the new Farm Business Options series. My name is Barry Caslin, and the aim of Farm Business Options is to give landowners thinking of diversifying their income a good understanding of how to turn an idea into a viable business, and also to introduce you, the viewers, to agencies or parties who may be able to offer tangible assistance for a specific project area. Today's topic is the development of sustainable energy communities. The webinar is recorded, and there is a chat function there at the very bottom of your screens if you want to hover over it. And for those of you who've just joined us, you're very, very welcome. It's a very topical area, the whole area of sustainable energy communities. We see it right across Europe, where it's developed and advanced at quite a large pace. And there's a certain amount of it happening in Ireland as well. So we have three guests for you here today. We have Gerry Reaburn, we have Deirdre from the Dingle Hub, and we have my own colleague, Kevin O'Sullivan from Teagasc. So the three of them have, I suppose, different areas or perspectives in relation to community energy to talk to us about today. So without further ado, what I'll do is I'll introduce our first guest, Gerry Reaburn. And Gerry is a renewable energy researcher who also specialises in rural community development. He's currently completing a PhD in the Centre for Energy and Renewables at Dundalk Institute of Technology as part of the Interreg 5A Spire 2 project on storage platforms for integration of renewable energy. His main areas of work concerns researching, assessing and evaluating client-appropriate sustainable energy solutions for individuals, homes, farms, businesses and communities. Projects which Gerry has undertaken include Interreg, Peace, Leader, Horizon 2020, SEAI community programs and REDS. Gerry holds a master's and postgraduate diploma in renewable energy systems, a higher degree in product design engineering and diploma in rural development and mechanical engineering. He also has a FETAC level 6 qualification in energy crop management. Good morning, Gerry, and you're very welcome. Gerry, you're on mute there at the moment. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Barry. Hello. Sorry, I have all those qualifications you mentioned. The one qualification I haven't got is in speeding up Wi-Fi and being able to make things talk to each other. So if I'm going looking sideways a little bit here, don't worry. In the true tradition of these webinars, I'm going to have to wing it. The presentation isn't working on the share screen as we saw earlier, as we saw 15 or 10 minutes ago. So we'll be talking about. So I'm going to start basically talking about what sustainable energy communities are. We'll work through so far along the pathway within that, and then we'll hand over to Deirdre and then subsequently to Kevin, who are going to go on then and talk about their experiences in the same thing. So, as we said before, on all these farm options that you've done, we're going to do less talking and get more to the questions quicker. So I'm going to try and do that now, especially seeing as I've got no slides. The slides will be available, and I'll send them on, and anyone who wants to see them are more than welcome to have them then as well. There's plenty of links and that on them as well for where they need to go. So what is a sustainable energy community? Well, basically a sustainable energy community is a group of people working together to develop a sustainable energy system in their community. As far as possible, they're aiming to be energy efficient. They're going to use renewable energy where they can, and also they're going to use adapt smart options, smart energy solutions wherever they can as well. So what does an energy community project require? Well, an energy community project requires the same as any project in any community requires. It's going to take time, it's going to need commitment, and it's going to have to be an informed approach. You can't just go with this, seeing as this is a farm one, like a bull at a gate, and just charge through it. You have to think about what you're doing, and you have to go along. There is plenty of support and there's plenty of help there to show you what you need to do along the way. So working together, if you're working together as a community, and a community doesn't have to be a geographical thing. It can be a community of like-minded people spread around a wider geographical area, or it could be a geographical area either. But the benefits of working together as a community or as a group in it, no different than any of the knowledge transfer groups or anything else that are going on. If you share the workload, if you're doing some work, you get better value for money because there's more people getting the work done at the same time, and you've got the bigger impact then as well, because instead of just one person doing it, it's a number of people doing it. Okay, so what are they looking at? Well, they're looking at, I suppose, to say a holistic way of doing it for the benefit of the community. You're looking at projects in homes, you're looking at transport, you're looking at local businesses, and you're looking at farms, farm buildings. And definitely I would be on a bit looking at the farmhouse as well, and looking at your energy and how you're using your energy in your farmhouse as well as, sorry, just on your farm. There's big impacts to changing your energy use, your energy consumption, and the way you think about energy in terms of sustainability and the environment. And the group action helps that. It always helps when you have other people to interact with and to talk with, to share your experiences and to share your learnings. I'm a big advocate of the shared learnings. The shared learnings and the shared experiences are very important for all of this, and be able to look at case studies and feed information back to each other on how it works. You know, working together with the whole thing helps towards these goals. And there is an SEC community project available there, and there is an SEC community mentoring project available as well, where people can access, and I've links within that as well, where you can get that through SEAI, the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland. Why do we use less energy? Well, if you use less energy, first and foremost, and the energy efficient, that's the cheapest and it's the most straightforward way, because I can assure you nothing's going to use any energy on you when it's turned off. So you think about it that way there as well. Okay? We're looking towards clean energy, trying to move away from the fossil fuels as much as we can, whether that be for heating. We're moving ultimately towards moving away from the fossil fuels for transport, but that might be just a little bit off yet. So at this stage, and probably in a lot of the projects we're looking at here, we're looking more at using technologies both to generate and to replace older, maybe inefficient like motors and different things that may have been around your yard. Okay, and using smart technology, using the smart technology, work smarter with technology. I'm sure there's going to be questions on all this as we move on, so I'm not going to bore down into what all that is. So to get the ball rolling, the first thing you need to do is to build your group. More hands, more heads, more skills, the better. The main thing is enthusiasm and drive. And I would say personally, from my own experience as well, the most important thing if you're setting the group up together is if everybody hasn't got the same interest and you have a lot of diverse bits feeding into it as well, that's a big help. And the other thing about it as well is that you certainly don't want 10 engineers only on your committee. If you have 10 engineers only on your committee, they're going to spend the rest of their life fighting over what's the best technology to move on with, and no one's ever going to see anything out of it. Okay? How do you go about becoming an energy community? We've talked a little bit of why you might want to do it. How do you go about actually becoming one? Ultimately, you register with SEAI. The links are within the presentation as well. And there is a Sustainable Energy Community Network. You can learn more about that. And the big difference now in more recent years is there now are community mentors on the ground. There's a mentor on the ground or two mentors on the ground in nearly every county in Ireland. You can access the information to where you contact them through the SEAI network, and then they will talk to you. Generally, in most situations, they actually are people from that county or from that geographic area, so they'll know what you're talking about. They'll be able to meet you. They'll be able to tic-tac with you. They'll know the lie of the land around in the area, what you might be talking about. So instead of, you're not dealing with a website and you're not dealing with a frequently asked questions type of situation, you're actually dealing with a person who can talk to you. And that'll help you get the ball rolling. Ultimately, you'll be able to move on towards, on your pathway, there's a 3-part plan, which we'll move on to now, which is basically learn, plan, and do. You have to learn first what you want to do before you move towards your planning for it, and ultimately you move on to doing. The learn situation, I suppose, is about building your capacity as you start. So that's forming your group, getting a good steering group together, deciding on what you want to do. I'll use the example here of one that I'm involved with in County Louth. What they wanted to do 3 things, and this is what they went towards. They wanted to educate, they wanted to renovate, and they wanted to generate. So ultimately, they looked at providing education in the community. So instead of just telling the people you need to do this, they told them why they needed to do it. Then they looked at the renovate, which is retrofit, which would be similar to what could be doing upgrades on your farm or whatever else, not just on your house. So the people know why they should be doing them. Then they're providing the capacity to them to actually do it. Ultimately, that allows you to draw down grant funding and actually go ahead and do the projects. Like as I say, we're on a 5-minute scale here, or 8-minute scale here to try and get the information across, so I'm moving on fairly quick. To date, there are over 450 of these communities in the country. They can be small rural towns, they can be local urban centres, neighbourhoods, they could be anything, but they could be farm groups. We'll have Deirdre talking later on, and it'll be given an example of that, where it can be, where it's a farm group. What are the benefits of becoming an SEC? Well, I suppose you get your mentoring, you get learning support, you can network with other communities, you learn a bit from other communities, and as I say, it's the shared learnings and able to see case studies from what worked before. you think about your energy use in your own community in an informed way. And you get access to events and everything else as well that you might want to attend. I have a lovely graph there for which you can't see now for learning, planning, and doing. But ultimately, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get on your path that you go from you're a group together with similar ideas who think they want to form an energy community. It's to get that in a more structured way. You then move along to planning towards doing an energy master plan for your area. Don't worry, you don't have to do that yourself. You'll get support for that, you'll get help for that. But that will be looking at baseline energy use in your own community or your own group, whether it's a group of farmers or a group of dairy users or whatever else. And ultimately then you can pass through that pathway, out through that, you get a list of live projects in your locality that are available and eligible for grant funding, and then you can move on ultimately, hopefully then, and draw that down. I'm sorry, I lost me presentation, and this has probably been a bit up and down, but we'll move on now, I think, to Deirdre and let her talk some real life scenarios or some questions, Barry, whichever you want to do.
Okay, Gerry, it was a bit unfortunate that your presentation today, and these are the issues that you have with the likes of Zoom and dealing with the virtual world. But thanks very much for that presentation, Gerry. Just in relation to setting up the groups, you're obviously the mentor for SEI in County Louth, and for the SECs, the Sustainable Energy Communities. As regards pulling your group together, can you give us an idea of what type of groups you're dealing with at the moment in that area?
Yeah, well, we have a major one. One of the first ones to start off in County Louth, more or less, was for a pretty much geographic area for the whole of Mid Louth. But I went into smaller ones. Then we're into smaller villages and into smaller towns, where it's much smaller groups. And those smaller groups have more, they're more interested in projects geographically in their own area or exactly relating to their own interests, or it may be somebody that has community centres or community buildings, and that's their main aim that they are working towards, and that's why they are a partner in forming an SEC. I think Deirdre's option and example later will show more in the farming one. We're not a huge farming area up here, and we haven't as yet got an SEC formed just out of a similar farming group, whether that be a tillage group, dairy group. And
Gerry, you have a good idea of, I suppose, tillage or the farming scene yourself with your rural development background. But do you see opportunities here for agriculture? And I know Deirdre will be giving us a real example of an SEC in Dingle in County Kerry fairly soon. But I see a lot of knowledge transfer groups that were part of the last Common Agriculture Policy Pillar 2 knowledge transfer groups. And are there opportunities for those groups maybe to organise themselves collectively as sustainable energy communities to maybe look at energy efficiency on their farms, or maybe look at master plans for those different sectors such as tillage, dairy and poultry, pigs, etc.?
There absolutely is, and there's support there for them as well. And I would strongly encourage anyone to investigate this more. I know I'm pointing you towards the SEAI website, but that is really the starting point from it to get contacts. I'll give out my contact details after this as well, if anyone particularly in County Louth. But look it up. The information is out there where it is. But there is loads of opportunities. There's loads of opportunities for the organising of events. You could bring groups together from other parts of the country, maybe virtually, hopefully eventually in real life, and share those learnings as well. But it wouldn't be down on the individual to have to organise it. That can be done through the mentoring, and it can be done through the wider network. So the person who has the idea may not be thinking, well, I'm going to have to organise all this. I'm going to have to put all the bums on the seats. I'm going to have to organise where it is. You won't have to do all of that. That help is there in the background. But you're basically planning. What I like to see is you like to get it to where you are in a situation where you're doing. And if you had seen my final slide was going to say, when all is said and done, let's hope there's more done than said. And that's what you want to get to here.
Okay, well said. Gerry, we'll leave it there. We'll just leave that one there for the moment, and we're going to come back to you after 5 for questions. So just get you to mute for the minute. And now West Kerry dairy farmers are spearheading an initiative to get up to 120 dairy farmers to invest in energy saving technologies which will save them money and make their farms more sustainable. Deirdre Wallace is the manager of the Dingle Creativity and Innovation Hub. Her key focus is to build a sustainable community through fostering an ecosystem that supports the creation of well-paid, year-round jobs on the Dingle Peninsula. To execute this goal, she drives multiple projects, which includes the community's transition to a low-carbon society, the generation of startup enterprises through digital transformation, and the development of creative industries on the Dingle Peninsula. Deirdre is a chartered engineer and holds a BE in electronic engineering from NUIG and a master's in engineering science from UCC. Deirdre, I'll hand over to you. You're sharing your slides already, and you'll give us a short presentation, and then we'll go to Kevin, and then we'll take the questions after that. Okay, Deirdre?
Thanks very much, and thanks for the invitation to speak today. I was brought up myself on a small farm here in the Dingle Peninsula, but I suppose I was always encouraged to pursue a non-farming related career, I suppose given the lack of financial uncertainty evident back then. And so I chose engineering. But it really excites me today to see that the changes in our working lives are enabling many engineers to combine their roles with farming careers. And I'm really encouraged to see them developing solutions to address climate change. They're really well placed for this, as they have such an understanding of the challenges that face the sector. And this is what we are seeing unfolding in front of us here in West Kerry. You might all ask why a regional hub that provides shared workspace is giving a talk on energy solutions for agriculture. So if you'll bear with me, I hope I can explain this over the course of the next few minutes. Our mission is to build a livable, sustainable community and to facilitate well-paid year-round incomes on the Dingle Peninsula. Up until very recently, maintaining careers here was not an easy task, and so many generations of young people had to leave the area for more urban centres. I'm certain it's a similar case in most of rural Ireland. That's all changed now, and with the widespread uptake of home working practices, people are no longer tied to urban areas for career progression. And this bodes really well for rural Ireland, as we already see a regeneration happening with increased numbers in local schools and on the playing fields, and new people who are bringing a wealth of experience and knowledge to the area, and many of whom are very eager to share their skills and their time on development projects that benefit the whole community. So the Dingle Hub's work centres on unlocking economic opportunities through the transition to a low carbon society. And we're learning that the two objectives fit very well together. We're aiming to achieve local employment impact of greater than 200 new jobs and over 200 new connected home working incomes sustained here on the peninsula. Unlocking these opportunities for the agricultural sector is a major part of this work, as farming is such a mainstay of life here in West Kerry. So in practice, our work is all about building living networks under the 4 pillars shown here. We build these networks locally, regionally, nationally, and now internationally too, and we leverage them to unlock mechanisms to resource and fund different projects. We also work to identify skills needs and either access or create training programs to deliver on those needs. We started with an overall Dingle Peninsula Energy Master Plan, looking at the sustainability pillar. And from this, we know that almost half of the greenhouse gas emissions on the peninsula relate to agriculture and half to energy use. And this directed us very quickly towards the development of projects in these areas to help achieve ambitious targets of 28% energy reduction, that's 86 gigawatt hours, and 43% CO2 reduction, that's 74 kilotons, by 2030. We know that all of this energy costs us 38 million per annum, and there is the potential to reduce this bill by 8 million. That's a lot of money to retain here on the peninsula each year. So, recognising the vital role that agriculture plays in the economy of the peninsula and the importance of tackling related emissions, we engaged at an early stage with our local farming community, starting with the discussions for the potential for anaerobic digestion to address the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, while at the same time providing a new stable revenue stream for those farms that would produce grass for the anaerobic digester. I'm sure most of you are very familiar with it, but anaerobic digestion is where you turn feedstocks such as slurry or other waste material into biogas, and you need to provide silage for that process as well. It makes a lot of sense for a community heavily dependent on agriculture to explore this as a source of renewable energy, as it has the added benefit of reducing greenhouse gas emissions when it captures the methane from the slurry. We began working with Gas Networks Ireland to explore the feasibility of this and launched a study in May 2019 funded by Gas Networks Ireland and Deirdre through the EU Local Energy Communities project. Given that we are over 75 kilometres from the nearest grid injection point in Listowel, we knew that the feasibility would be challenging, but innovative ideas would have to emerge. And we're certainly looking at things like the opportunities for biofuel for transportation markets and how they will evolve, and to see will that make it feasible for us here. Another key project that I want to draw your attention to is the Community Energy Mentor training course delivered in late 2019. Through the support of Kerry Education Training Board and SCAI, we equipped 11 members of the community with knowledge relating to domestic energy efficiency, renewable energy options, and the potential for community-owned energy projects. They are now exploring the potential to pilot new energy service platforms with 2 startup companies. They're an informed and knowledgeable group who are well placed to assess the benefits of these platforms to enable community-owned energy and retrofits at scale in the community. I want to acknowledge the incredible work done by local farmer Dennis Galvin, who is a participant on the majority of these projects that you see outlined here. He took part in the Community Energy Mentor course and recognised the opportunity for the dairy sector to come together to establish the West Kerry Dairy Farmers Sustainable Energy Community, and from this to obtain funding to run an energy master plan specific to the sector. The Energy Master Plan is about to start and will deliver audits on a number of farms that will represent the more than 100 dairy farm members of the SEC. It will provide a baseline of energy use for the farms as a whole and detailed recommendations for energy efficiency and renewable energy measures at an individual farm level, and also a 5-year action plan for collective measures. So some of the measures to be addressed include lighting efficiencies for in outdoor buildings and yards, and really inefficient lighting is one of the worst energy use culprits. There are many savings to be gained by addressing that first. Another interesting one is water heat exchangers to capture the heat from cooling of the milk to heat water to greater than 50 degrees. This becomes quite interesting if farm dwellings are close to the dairies, and it makes a lot of sense to send this water back to the house. But really significant cost savings could be made if the farm dwelling is also a guest house. Solar PV is a very attractive renewable energy solution for farms, given the amount of roof space available. The current proposal for microgeneration is to allow for 70% of own use and 30% sale to the grid. This can provide an additional revenue stream for farmers, but in reality, it will always be more cost efficient to use the energy produced. So if the farm dwelling and business are on the same meter, then the ideal scenario would be to supply to the home. It gets a little more complex if there are 2 meters in place, but the option is always there to heat water with the solar PV and share this energy with the home. The West Kerry Dairy Farmers SEC will explore all of these in detail, and I'd certainly recommend maybe a dedicated webinar in the future to learn about the findings once it is complete. Looking towards the future, we can see that farms that can scientifically prove sustainability criteria will be able to demand premium prices for their products. It will be critical for Irish farmers to avoid low-cost commodity markets for their produce, and your strong cooperative structures will be key to supporting you to prepare for this. There will certainly be a role for digital technologies to help provide the necessary data, and so we've begun to explore solutions to support carbon cost and labour efficiencies on farms through our Farm Ambassador pilot project with Teagasc Kerry agribusiness and technology provider Netfasa. The aim is to optimise grassland management techniques in a labour efficient manner and ultimately scientifically prove sustainable production. We'll be participating as a sustainable innovation pilot on the EU Plutus project, and that will enable us to roll out digital technology solutions to 30 farms on the peninsula. We leverage international expertise and work with the local farmers to identify and select the most suitable technology solutions for West Kerry. The overall aim is to increase in profitability in farms, as well as identifying new income streams for higher value products. So the hub's role in all of this will be to continue to build and strengthen the networks, to enable new enterprise and community working groups, and to unlock the mechanisms to resource and fund projects. So I hope I've helped answer the question as to why a regional hub is stuck in the middle of all of this. Thank you very much for your time.
Deirdre, thank you very much. That was great. Good overview of what you're doing down there. Great work being done down there as well in the whole area of the decarbonisation of the agricultural sector, because it's a major challenge. And you are obviously in a great agricultural area in West Kerry. And you mentioned there about the master plans there, or the master plan that's been developed. Can you give us an idea of what that entails? You know, is that an individual look at each individual farm, or is it something different?
It will be a sample of representative farms. So what it will entail will be taking a look at different categories of farms. So if there are farms where the dwelling house is close to the dairy, that would be one subset to look at, and hopefully that would represent a larger number of farms. The other interesting category, as I said, is those businesses, those farm businesses that have both the same electricity meter as the farm dwelling, and those businesses that have two separate meters, because they're two distinct categories and will need different measures. But some measures will be the same across the board. Looking at lighting is an absolute no-brainer, I suppose, is the one you could say. The percentage of energy savings to be gained from that, that's easily translatable across the West Kerry group, but also across all farmers nationally as well. So it would be very interesting to share the learnings from those and just identify those key simple measures that people can take in the short term, and then look to the medium and long term. And you have a sustainable energy community there in West Kerry, as you mentioned. Dingle Hub, who has been really spearheading that with yourselves, has been a key influencer in that. And I think it's very important to have a local farmer like that understands the issues and that can maybe educate everybody else of the importance of this. Do you find there's a lot of negativity towards green issues within agriculture, or is that changing? I suppose we're in the fortunate position, as I said, we engaged very early with our local farming community, and those farmers that we're working with are very eager to progress projects around sustainability and to show that the work that they are doing is being done in a sustainable manner. And I suppose we see our role as maybe helping to identify the tools that can support them to do that. I've been on I'm on the steering group of the Dairy Farmers SEC, and at some of the meetings I was saying, you know, I really wish the public at large and the policymakers could see the willingness and enthusiasm of the farming community to be involved in this and to identify solutions for their future. Deirdre, we leave it there for the moment. That's great. And if anybody has any questions, that's very interesting that you did the AD study and you completed that. And I'd be interested to talk to you more about that as well. But we leave it there at the moment, Deirdre. If anybody has any questions for Deirdre or for Gerry, who's an SEC or who's the SEC mentor above in Louth, you can put your questions there in the chat function, and we'll put them to them all at the end of this. But staying in Kerry, we're moving to the south of Kerry now, and a new initiative to develop energy cooperatives is currently rolling out its plans. My colleague Kevin O'Sullivan is involved in this Interreg 5B project. Kevin works with the Teagasc Agricultural Sustainability Support and Advisory Programme, and he's based in the Teagasc office in Killarney. He works in the areas of water quality, the environment, and rural development. He represents Teagasc on the board of South Kerry Development Partnership and chairs the SKDP working group of the ECCO Interreg project on the community-owned renewable energy. So Kevin, over to you. You can share your screen with us. Oh, you've already done that, and we'll hand to you for a few minutes, and then we'll take questions afterwards.
That's grand. Thank you. Thanks, Barry. Look, I'll try and run through this as quickly as I can. There's a good bit in it. Just probably the easiest way to explain it is probably just be a little patient till I run through the slides, and hopefully it'll become clear when we complete them. What I'm kind of going to discuss with you is just our operation, if you like, as regards creating an energy community cooperative and owning renewable energy projects, and how to set it up and what our experiences are on it. Okay, so what we're involved with is it's an EU Interreg project, and it's operational until March 2022. There are 11 project partners, and they're spread around northwestern Europe to France, Germany, Wales, the Netherlands, and Belgium. And the total budget for the Interreg project is 5.4 million. So where we are here, our group that are involved in it here, we are 60% Interreg funded, okay? And South Kerry Development Partnership, if you like, are the lead partner for us. And they're if you like, the administrative body for the Irish end of the project. So funding, most of it, like I said, comes from the Interreg fund, and then the matching funding comes from the Department of Rural and Community Development, the Department of Climate Change, Kerry Group, and FEXCO. The steering group then is made up of members of the South Kerry Development Partnership board members, and then members from the farming bodies, local businesses such as Kerry and FEXCO, and some state agencies. And I just mentioned here, Sean de Butler is an executive with South Kerry Partnership, and Sean does the bulk of the work with this, and it's really driven it. It's put a lot of work, his time into this, and I have the easy job really of just chairing the meetings. So the reasons for the project, and what are the the thinking behind it, up to the fairly recently, there hasn't really been any real community-led renewable energy projects in Ireland. Okay, so what we were looking at, and what this Interreg project was looking at, is developing those in the member states that are involved in the project, and using the experiences of our partners in the continent, and that who have much more further ahead than we are in this, and using their experiences in this area, and using them to our benefit, and I suppose the pitfalls that they've encountered, and using them to our benefit and trying to avoid them, and that. And I'll just run through some of the opportunities then that are for the communities that were there to get involved in ownership of renewable energy projects. So like there's economic, social, environmental reasons for doing it. Briefly, just some of them, this is not an exclusive list now, but some of the benefits maybe for the communities. First of all, there's additional farm income. So if a farmer is leasing land, obviously, for a renewable energy project, he's going to get payment for that. It could be a payment over a considerable length of time, maybe up to 25 or 30 years. The return on investment for the shareholders in the community. So what we would envisage that the minimum would be that if for a community or a citizen in the community to invest in the project, that they would get all their money returned, and at the barest minimum there would be a return of 3 to 4% on their capital. And so look at, if the money is there, they're not going to earn anything for it in the bank at the moment. So that's I suppose an attraction. The big attraction for it, I suppose, if it can be achieved, is for what's known as a virtual power plant, in that the community shareholders in a project could actually use the energy corresponding to their shareholding for their own use. So they could use it in their domestic situation, maybe run it to run 1 or 2 cars or whatever, and that electricity then they would be basically getting at the cost of production. So that really is the ideal scenario if that was to arrive and we could achieve that over the next few years. I suppose it's opened up this whole area of energy production to the community instead of maybe large conglomerates and that. So that's an opportunity, I think, that's probably been shared around to citizens in the communities. Another benefit of it is, say, for example, if a large or even a small business or employers in an area, if they invest in the project, that can be used to offset their carbon footprint, and it makes their business more sustainable and makes the employment that they're supplying more sustainable as well. So that's an added attraction. Then, just for the community themselves, for a project to go ahead, just a local sense of achievement if they have, say, a solar farm or an AD or wind farm, whatever it may be, and they own it and it's in their community, it's obviously going to give us some sense of achievement within that community. Okay, so what are the goals of our project? So the initially is to develop a community-owned energy co-op in South Kerry, okay? And the key principle would be that the project would be open and accessible to all the members of the community. We would develop it up to the point that it's shovel ready. So all the work will be done, the background work, and I'll kind of go through some of that kind of stuff that needs to be done on the left side. It will be a transferable model. So hopefully it'll be a blueprint for other communities to use both in the region and outside our region. So again, that our experiences could be used for other projects. So there is potential there for other projects. Now, just to run through kind of what kind of are the challenges and costs associated with a project like that. First of all, if we have a project in mind, you would have to do a feasibility study on it. Now, feasibility studies for these kind of projects are expensive. Looking maybe in the region 30, 40, 50,000, 30,000 probably at a minimum. You need to secure grid connection. Okay, so first of all, you'll have to see is there grid connection access points available, and then you'll have to secure a grid connection by applying to ESB networks to get a grid connection. Then the site that you're using, you know, ideally that should be close to the grid connection point, because the further you are from the grid connection point, the more expensive it's going to be in cabling, and the estimate is that it costs up to 100,000 per kilometre of cabling. So if you're 10 kilometres away, it's going to add €1 million to the cost of your project. Planning then, of course, is always an issue with any kind of energy project. So wind or solar or whatever it is, you know, you're going to end up addressing planning issues. Following that, then you're looking at securing a viable rest price. So this is basically the price that you're going to get paid in your project for the energy that you produce or the electricity you produce. And if the value of, say, the kilowatt hour of electricity or the kilowatt of electricity you're producing is not high enough, the project won't be viable. So again, that would be kind of come into the feasibility study. Then you're looking at community engagement. Okay, so maybe how do you address the community, make them aware of the project and kind of create interest for it, and that's obviously difficult in the present certain kind of health circumstances with COVID we find ourselves in. So then another step along the line is the design of the ownership structure. So once you've all that kind of, you've got up through all these hurdles, you have to decide what kind of a cooperative you're going to have and what way is it designed and what are the rights for it and so on. So all that has, again, our partners in Europe now would have done a lot of work in this area, so we can kind of draw on their experiences in that. Then after all that, you're going to, or even before you get to go through any of this, you're looking at initial community seed capital. So all of this, when I've got to this point, is expensive, you know, and there's a lot of money going to be involved in it. So this is a difficulty for communities to actually get that funding together, to actually go through all the feasibility studies and the plannings and the applications and so on. So that's just give you an idea of some of the challenges and costs with it. Okay, just some of the wider kind of challenges and opportunities on it, like there is, as I mentioned, kind of engaging with communities, like there is a challenge with that there at the moment. Lobbying at national and EU level, like to protect your, the opportunity for communities to get involved in this renewable energy, if you like, revolution, and to make it as easy for them as possible to get involved in it. So, and that would kind of involve developing policy proposals for the area and education and kind of showcasing best practices once projects are up and running, to kind of, if you like, to transfer that knowledge back into other areas and regions and communities that want to develop a project. So basically, that's my presentation, as brief as I can make it. Barry, if you have any questions, I'll try and answer them.
Okay, loads of questions coming in there. Kevin, thanks very much for that. Great overview of the project, and a fantastic project. And you know, there's a lot of these projects right across Europe. So sustainable energy communities is nothing new at European level, but it just seems to have taken a bit of time for it to evolve here in Ireland. So I think this is something that you're going to see more of in the future. If we can ask Gerry and Deirdre to turn on their cameras there as well, please. And we'll just take in the questions as they're coming in. One question that has come in there for you: do you believe that this co-op framework will convince policymakers, Kevin, to incorporate the eco concept into their energy policy?
Well, I think it's probably important that they do, and I'd be hopeful that they would. It is a huge opportunity for communities, you know. I suppose even from the point of view of, look at large corporations aren't getting into this for the benefit of the community. You know, they see it's motivated by profits, of course, you know, which is fine. But you would like to see the communities themselves could take some ownership within their own communities, and, you know, and get some of that, if you like, for what profit, and I mean profit, not purely financially, maybe in their local communities. So it's like you say, it's really in infancy in Ireland, this area, and that. So I would hope that the work we're doing with the project that we have will kind of, and some of our experiences in it, and that would help other projects to develop. As regards to policy area, I think it's probably important we keep kind of an eye on departments and kind of government policy, that they make the route for communities as easy as possible, because it isn't that easy. Like I kind of described, like it's certainly a circuitous route, and you would fall at any hurdle on it. And trying to get, especially kind of funding capital for communities, is difficult. You know, much more so than for large corporations.
Yeah, and you're really moving from a centralized capital-based approach to a decentralized community-based approach. So I think it's fantastic, and in a rural area as well, to demonstrate how that can work. I think it'll show leadership for other communities around the country as well. When you talk about a co-op, are you referring to the same co-op ethos that we're familiar with from our dairy co-ops, Kevin?
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually. The short answer to that is probably that we don't know, and there needs to be probably, I think now, and some of the other speakers now might have taken this as well, but the suspicion is that the kind of the co-op setup like that, would it be used for, if you like, agricultural co-ops, and that may not fit this very well, you know. Now, there is legislation there that's covered by quite old legislation, and that co-op setup. So without any kind of final decision being made in it, I would suspect that it won't fit it very well, and it would probably need to be modified, I think, you know. So, but we'll learn about that as we go along.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. We'll go around some of these questions that are coming in on the chat function there. So again, if you have any more questions, put them in the chat. We'll put them to our panelists there, please. Thanks, Kevin, for that. Question there from Wendy Lynch to Gerry. Gerry, are there any plans for a digester? And that refers to a biogas plant or an anaerobic digester in County Louth.
Well, there's always talk about them. There's always talk about them, and talk produces lots of hot air as well, I suppose. But you need the feedstock. You know, you're not that far away from the gas network. You know, there is definitely moves afoot down in Cork and Limerick for a biodigester, and there is a pilot program there with Bhailís are involved in down there. There's a lot of work going down around there, but there's a lot of feedstock, I suppose, available around there. I suppose the thing in many counties, and looking at digesters, and whether they're supported or not, or what the appetite for them is politically in the country or not, policy-wise, you can't really base it on what you see in the north as well, and what's going on in the north, which probably is sort of moves the thing a little bit from what people see in County Louth, and to see people in the north running digesters left, right, and centre on farms. So
Yeah,
is there plans for one? Yes, there's always plans. Yes, there's always plans for one. Am I going to say there is? I'm not going to say on this that there is or there isn't.
Yeah, there's probably feasibility studies, because there's a long lead-in time, as is the way I would answer that question. There's a long lead-in time for anaerobic digesters to be built, from the planning, the grid connection, all of that. So there are probably people getting their ducks in a row to get all of that in place. But as you mentioned, Gerry, the policy environment isn't just right there at the moment, whether it's producing electricity and heat, or which is CHP or combined heat and power, or whether you're upgrading biogas to biomethane. Again, the policy environment does not is not conducive to anaerobic digestion at the moment. So maybe there are plans going on in the background, and but you're not aware of anything, Gerry, at the moment, anyways.
Well, sometimes you just have to work with policy as well, Barry, and you can lobby, as Kevin and Deirdre says, to try and get stuff changed and that. But if it's not changing and it's not going to move, you have to be realistic sometimes as well in what plans you're going to try and push ahead with as well. Because you can be burying money into something that's never going to fly if you're not careful, and that's very important to look at as well. Sure, you're well advised on that.
Yeah. Question here: are there grants available to work on lighting improvements on local farms? Gerry, I suppose I'll answer from a TAMS perspective, and there's nothing there in the TAMS to cover lighting improvements on farms at the moment. That's the Targeted Agricultural Modernisation Scheme. You are required to put LED lights into new builds, but from through an SEC type initiative, would that be possible?
It might be possible, Barry, if you can bunch up what different measures that you're doing. You could be doing a number of different measures, maybe not just lighting on its own. A lot of the time in the communities grant, if you can show a kilowatt hour saving, which you certainly could on lighting, if you had 10 very efficient old halide type lights out around your yard, you're going to replace all of them with LED lights, you'd have a fairly major, as Deirdre said earlier as well, a kilowatt hour saving within that. But you may have to bunch that up with other stuff as well. Or there's always the possibility to it's a group thinking into it as well, like the group of dairy farmers and all them. If there was 10 dairy farmers going to work together to do it, for example, and relight their yards, well, then they have a mini project in their own right themselves, and they may then be able to make an application through the communities grant on its own, probably partnering with other projects going on as well. There's a whole presentation of this, Barry, as we spoke about previously, separately, just on the funding end of it. But I wouldn't say no. Okay,
Deirdre, you mentioned the lighting as part of your presentation. Is that something that the West Kerry farmers or dairy farmers are looking at?
Yeah, that will be one of the first measures, because it is the low-hanging fruit to take a look at it. And I would agree there with what Gerry said. I mean, the strength is in the numbers of the group coming together there. You also have the bulk purchasing power in that, if they are to undertake these measures, and that can bring significant cost savings in itself.
Deirdre, while you're speaking there, you just might give us an overview of the anaerobic digestion project, because there was a question on AD in Louth. Is it feasible or to do it in Dingle? Are you looking at food waste? Are you looking at the hotel industry, maybe the food waste from there, combined with the agricultural byproducts?
Yeah, so there were a number of technical pathways assessed for us. It was found that combined heat and power was not feasible, but the production of the upgrade to biomethane for grid injection was a viable option. But the economics change considerably if there is a developed market for transport fuels. That would be, say, trucks, biogas, buses or tractors coming into the peninsula and refueling here from what we produce here. Now, those markets are obviously not in existence yet, but as you said, this is preparation for a long lead-in time, and you do need the policy supports to come into play to enable this to happen. But yes, it is very much, I suppose, the objective of it was to capture the methane from the slurry. It's not, it is those additionalities that are so valuable here. So it is using slurry, it is using silage as a feedstock, food waste is part of it, and also offal. It was another very, very small part of it, but it's a very valuable one if we want to encourage short supply chain businesses here and getting that farm to fork right here on the peninsula. So it's an opportunity to use it for offal as well.
And is there much grass silage part of the plan, or is it mainly food waste? What's the kind of the breakdown?
No, the breakdown would be majority slurry, and then that has to be supplemented with silage. So they're the two main components. So the food waste and the offal would be very, very small components of the whole thing.
And would this be a community-owned project, do you think?
That's the absolute intention of it. That is the vision for it, that it is a community-owned project. And
Okay.
again, we're exploring those, I suppose, different mechanisms for how that would work. And I think I'd agree with Kevin that we're not quite sure that the co-op structure as it exists at present is the right one. So there are a number of different avenues, and I suppose we're looking to Europe as well for their experience as to how community-owned energy structures will work into the future and how we would put that in place for a project here.
Very good. Question there, what advice would you give to young farmers taking over old farms with very little capital to begin the transition to green energy?
I think one of the first steps is to take a look at your energy supplier. Really take note of your bills and what you're spending energy on. Reduce where at all possible. There are very significant savings to be made, and you could use those savings then to make investments as you go.
I suppose it'll depend on the type of farm too, and you know, the poultry farms would be using and the pig units would be using a lot more energy, would be a lot more energy intensive than a beef farm. But most beef farmers wouldn't be using a lot of energy. In fact, most beef farmers would lose less electricity or energy than they'd use in a domestic house. Whereas the dairy farmers, yes, will be using that bit more, might be using 5 times that of a typical domestic house. And I suppose there will be opportunities that will emerge for those young farmers. This is just my comment on it, that there will be opportunities that will emerge in terms of microgeneration, of maybe selling excess electricity to the grid. That's under consultation at the moment, that whole area. And I suppose there's opportunities there for young farmers as well, you know, to get the TAMS grants for energy efficient lighting in sheds, to install that technology. And I suppose maybe there's other opportunities then for maybe putting in variable speed drives and on dairy farms as well that may emerge in the future. But there's no support at the minute for variable speed drives on dairy farms. Gerry, have you anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, the variable speed drive on Barry, it sort of opens and closes. It did exist a few times on pilot stuff, but as you know yourself, it was a very brief window, and it was done in severe panic. Both the application and the installation was done in haste by the people that were at the time. So I suppose those kind of things need to be looked at. And what I'm thinking about when I'm listening to Deirdre and Kevin talking about their things as well is that for communities to be involved in these projects as well, like the policy and the guidelines and the rules need to be there, and they need to have a fair idea that they're going to be there when the project comes to fruition as well, because we can all start off, and we all have started off with communities, and communities are looking at microgeneration, and they're looking at bigger generation projects, or getting involved in the RESS or the different things like that. But they need some level of security in their own minds before they can even start getting people involved in these projects, that the rules of the game that they're playing with now will be the same rules they're playing with at the end of the game. And that's important as well, I think. The only other thing I was going to say, just when you were talking about the young farmers moving on to their farm now and they're looking at their energy use, depending on the type of energy meter they have in their meter box in the house, if they have one of the newer meters in with the flashing red light, it's an Esper meter and a blue button on it. If they press the button on it and they look across on the bottom of it, they'll be able to see what sort of day rate electricity and how much night rate electricity they're using. And there may well be a possibility for them to switch over to day and night electricity quite simply. And if they're not doing that, maybe look at when they're using it. If they're using a lot of their energy at night, a lot of electricity at night, there could be major savings to be made to switch over.
Yeah,
We've been involved in a number of projects where they might have saved several thousands in the year just for switching over to the day and night rate.
I think the rollout of smart meters really will enable the use of real-time energy consumption data, and it really could change the way that energy tariffs are structured in the future. and probably help link the consumption directly with the generation. And I think that'll be very relevant maybe to local projects in the likes of Dingle and South Kerry as well, that if you're trying to maybe develop a private wire network, I think smart metering will be very, very important in terms of measuring the demand in the local area and maybe looking at the supply, whether that's coming from solar or wind. As a result of that, do you see, can you just give us an idea how you do your research, Gerry, in terms of logging data on farms, how you collect that data? And if somebody wanted to go about, say, collecting the energy information on the farm, say a farmer wants to know about his bulk tank, his dairy bulk tank, how much electricity it's using in comparison to maybe the energy required for heating the hot water, for the immersion, for cleaning out the bulk tank, etc. How is all that in, and maybe the water well, how you measure all those individual energy requirements on your farm?
Yeah, well, the first thing I suppose to say is you don't start pulling at it yourself. You get an electrician in to look at it before, but you can install a little small metering around the wires, and if you can find where they're actually going, so you can find the wire that's actually connected to your bulk tank, the wire that's going to your well or whatever else, you can set a little small meter up, which will actually tell you that. You can get a proportion then of how much you're using. It can be a very useful thing to do. We have seen in the past, say if someone has 5 kilowatts of submersible pump down in a well, so if that's running basically for an hour, with all intents and purposes, that's going to cost you basically €1. So if that's pumping water out, if you have a lot of leaks or something on your farm, every hour it's going that it shouldn't be going, it's costing you €1. When you start talking to people and them figures, they soon start taking notice. When they think about the just under 9,000 hours in a year that they might be that feasibly they could be pumping out for, they starting to think about it. It's the small things you never see, but when you put it out over the year, if there's leaks there, if there's lights never been turned off, if there's sensors that have never been fixed and there's lights on the whole thing in sheds, it's all these things, and they're just nibbling away, and they're nibbling away at your bottom line, because that's your profitability at the end of it. But that energy has to be produced, and if that energy has to be produced at the minute, there's an emission associated with that, so you're contributing to that as well, and you're not even thinking about it, despite, as well as the fact that it's costing you money, as well as everything else. So it's the double win there to look at it. So it's very important to look at how you're using it and when you're using it. And if you are moving down the road to putting in a technology that you match your load to your resource, and this is something that you're supposed to feed into the micro generation, that you need to be consuming as much as what you're generating yourself realistically.
Yeah.
On farm as well.
And we do see loads of examples on dairy farms, where large amounts of heat from the fan, which is sucking in the air to cool the gas, to make ice, to cool down the bulk milk tank. And, we could be doing something there with that heat rather than blowing it out the window. And there is grants available through TAMS. There are farmers that need to replace the compressors in their parlours, and farmers are eligible for TAMS grant on those kind of investments. So I think that's important that farmers are aware of that there are grants available already through TAMS that can support energy efficiency on the farm. There's a question that came in there for Kevin there as well. Kevin, are you aware of the current issues that farming families across Ireland are experiencing from wind development? Would you agree that new wind development guidelines, which will have to address the issue of setback distance from dwelling houses, impact on ecology and impact on humans and animals, and low frequency noise for any future to be in place before we encourage some of the farming community to invest in projects which may impact their neighbours? I think that's just a general question. It's probably not for you, Kevin, to be answering, but I suppose it's something that you be taking into account, and I think engagement with local communities will be very important before any type of project, whether it's solar or wind, is developed.
Well, one thing I would say about it, I suppose, Barry, is for any project like renewable energy project, whether it's wind or solar or AD, whatever it is, like, it makes it much more attractive to the community if they own it, and that can address an awful lot of issues. I'm not saying that there is issues as regards wind in particular, but the actual fact that the community are getting the benefit out of the project might be, it's important, I think.
Okay. We are running out of time. Just one thing that Dinny has actually sent me in a note, Dinny Galvin from West Kerry Group. He says there's no grants available at the moment for compressor replacement under TAMS. You have to buy the tank and the compressor together. Okay, so that's an important clarification on that. So a lot of those, so I think it's just important before you set out on any of this that you speak to your local Teagasc advisor or your farm advisor just to see what exactly is included under the terms. So I'm going to leave it at that, folks. I just want to thank our guests. We had Kevin O'Sullivan, my colleague in Teagasc, Gerry Reaburn, a rural development specialist from County Louth, and renewable energy and energy mentor for SCEI in County Louth as well. And also to Deirdre from the Dingle Hub. Deirdre, thank you very much, and thank you all. Next week we'll be back again. My colleague Ashley Malloy will be speaking about diversification opportunities in East Cork. Until then, from me, Barry Caslin, it's goodbye, and thank you for watching.